Yeah. Hey, everybody. Sorry for the delay there. We had a little bit of a mix-up here with, when we were going to start, who was going to be joining us. I think Rod said he's going to be joining us later, but this is the Tigers Minor League Report weekly minor league recap. Of course, there are no minor league games going on. There is Arizona Fall League action going on, but this is kind of also, I guess, the official season post-mortem.
Probably first of a couple.
Yeah, there are going to be a lot of, I'm sure, plenty of discussions for, player targets and free agencies and trades and all that good stuff. But we figured we'd keep the schedule going here with our Monday shows. And so it's just me and you right now. A reminder to everybody out there, if you would, please, like and subscribe to our YouTube accounts and all that good stuff. That actually helps us out. And if you want to write a review, tell us we're the greatest single show of all time. That would help, but or whatever. You can curse us out in a different language. I don't really care, but reviews help. So, yeah, I don't know. We're busy watching other teams continue to play. This Dodgers Mets series has been kind of wonky, and
that's for sure.
Last I checked, the Yankees were beating the Guardians 3-0.
Yep.
I have not. So, for those of the people who need to, it's 4-0 now. So yeah.
Alex Cobb was about what you probably would have guessed Alex Cobb might be against that lineup.
Yeah. Well, it looked like, he gave up a homer, got through the lineup once, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then things went south, and then Joey Cantillo was not so good. But, yeah, we don't have to talk about the major leagues. This is the Tigers report here. And then the big news today, of course, was the kind of season press conference from A.J. Hinch and Scott Harris, which was, I don't know, it was nice. And it was a pleasant press conference, if you will, for the season coming to an end. It was nice. People seemed to be happy. There were questions, but it wasn't like, nobody had to go like, hey, what's the deal with this thing? Is this working or not? Everybody was like, well, I guess things seem to be going right. So what are your plans for next year? So,
yeah, you wouldn't quite say it was totally soaked in optimism.
Yeah,
but it was close. None of the questions were too damning.
Yeah.
or really put anybody on the spot. You could tell Hinch, especially, pretty upbeat about things. It seemed like they weren't too tortured with trying to put a positive spin on much. Everything was pretty, fairly up and up.
Yeah, and whenever these things happen, you try to parse the GM speak, and notice the negative space, notice the things that aren't said, if you will, and try to kind of imply. And we heard, Raj was down there. He was actually there in the for the actual press conference and took some audio and sent it to me, and then I typed up some quotes, and then Cameron, I think, typed up a whole big summary for us on the Motor City Metrics page, which was nice. I think that was Cameron.
Must have been.
Because it wasn't me. But yeah, there's a lot to get through, and maybe I should pull that up just so we can kind of touch on all these different topics. But the things that caught me and other people were pointing out is from our perspective, the minor league perspective, they were talking about the adjustments. A lot of the players making adjustments, and Hinch specifically pointed out Meadows and Keith, and mentioned Kedar Montero.
Yep.
And I think Harris mentioned Parker Meadows a couple times about getting punched in the face and coming back. And he talked about all these other younger players who haven't even had half a season yet, which was kind of his point. Trey Sweeney and Jace Young and Jackson Jobe didn't even get half a year yet, which is, I think it's fair. I think the increased attention on all these young guys at the end of the season, because the games were so much more important, made it feel like, they're never going to become anything if they don't perform now. You know what I mean? Like, Trey Sweeney had some nice moments, but he also looked really overmatched at times. And it's easy to forget that, like, he's got 140 plate appearances at the major league level or something like that. It's just because you're pressed into starting duty in a pennant race doesn't mean that you're fully formed.
Yeah.
So I thought that those were good points.
He's right. I mean, if he had done this, if the Tigers were 14 games under 500 and they're playing out the string, you just kind of shrug your shoulders, and that's just how it goes. But he was everybody was in that little playoff crucible now, down the stretch of, needing to perform when things mattered. So I think that Young, he has the power. I think something will happen next year. I think we'll get better. I think Hinch is right.
Yeah, and then what one of the things I was getting at, and then problematic VG says here, he says he seemed pretty critical of Torque through his GM speak. Yeah, and I think I don't know. I thought that was kind of the right tone to take with it. It was he basically said it's going to be a really big offseason for Spencer Torkelson. So, and he said he talked about at times he thought that Torkelson was looking to cover all his shapes. The way they talk about different pitches in the Tigers now with their shapes,
Yeah.
it does remind you of being like in kindergarten and like putting your little shapes in your little cutout thing. And then he said something about then Torkelson got caught trying to drive the ball, and he said he needs to be able to do both. And that's the confounding thing is because we have seen periods of time when he has done that. And the Spencer Torkelson that we saw battle Cade Smith and stroke a double, that's the guy that we know is in there sometimes, and that if he was there more frequently, there'd be a lot fewer questions heading in this offseason. But I don't know. You can't go in the offseason or go through this offseason expecting him to be that guy every at bat next year. But you also, I don't know if you want to fully give up on him quite yet. It's a tough place to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think a couple things there. I would have loved if someone had followed up with the question of, after Harris said it's important that he has a good off season. I would love to have put some meat on the bone there and say, what does that look like?
Yes.
But I will say this: I thought what Harris said made a lot of sense to me. That at first he was trying to cover shapes and he wasn't driving it. Then he was trying to drive it and he wasn't covering shape. I always kind of felt Spencer was in between, lost in the middle somewhere, but so he does need to do something where he needs to put in the work somewhere. I don't know if I can't imagine they're going to send him to winter ball, but he probably could use it. I don't know what that would do, but I think in terms of what he's doing next year, he's not even arbitration eligible yet. So I always say this: the easiest thing to do is nothing, and if nothing means that he's back. There's no reason to get rid of him. He has options.
Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely another spring training of Spencer Torkelson coming. It's just a matter of, do they convert one of their other players to a part-time first baseman, or do they bring someone in?
Yeah, and I mean the way, and that was another thing that Harris touched on was I just had that Mitch comment up there. I tune into Tigers minor league report whenever I can. I'm excited. I appreciate that, Mitch. Yeah, one of the things that Harris talked about is he used Matt Vierling as the example of he likes how they're kind of a multifaceted, versatile team, and how he basically said, if we bring in somebody on the infield, then Vierling can go to the outfield. If we bring in somebody in the outfield, then Vierling can go to the infield. That does give them options in the free agent market, which we'll touch on all that a little bit later. But I do think you're right. Like there's not the only reason you'd get rid of Torkelson, I guess, is if you've decided that it's just not going to work, or there's somebody else who makes you a really nice offer, an offer that you say, okay, this is somebody else's. You're not going to get gold for Torkelson right now because he just doesn't have that value. But if there's some other, we keep talking about distressed assets. Some other team has a player that they've kind of soured on, and you do your homework and you say, all right, he's not a bad dude. It's just, we think we can help him. You make a trade. Otherwise, but I also don't think that necessarily keeps you from exploring all your options in free agency in the trade market, because, worst comes to worst, Spencer Torkelson and or free agent first baseman can DH half the time. Yeah. You can never have too many big bats, right? You like to say that if you can hit, they'll find a place for you to play.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that AJ Hinch and Scott Harris are ever going to run out a 2013 Tigers style softball team,
right?
Where you've got negative defenders at basically every position. But at some point, I think they will make some concessions for big hitters. And so in the worst, Torkelson spends the rest of the year in AAA Toledo next year. Well, it is what it is, right? There's
exactly.
You can do about it.
At the end of the day, we've seen it. It happened. It's in the record books. He has a ceiling right now of a 31 homer guy, which they could use if that guy reappeared. And now this year he was a 10 homer guy with a whole lot of trouble. So at his age, I don't think he's done. I don't think that this year was a disaster in terms of wrecking his career. He can still find it. It's just a matter of what they do as a plan B, or maybe he's the plan B. Is there going to be a new plan A?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, I guess the one thing I always come back to, and my only concern, and it kind of relates to a little bit what they were talking about, these guys making adjustments this year. Parker Meadows went down, made the adjustments. Colt Keith, was battling, had the weight of the world on his shoulders, they said, and then he made the adjustments and was a productive player. For whatever reason, Spencer Torkelson, I can't adjust to say his name properly, seems to really struggle to make adjustments on the fly. And that's a huge aspect of being a big league player, because they're going to come at you with new ways to get you out as soon as you show that you can attack them in a different way.
Now, we probably wouldn't have gotten an answer, a straight one, but again, that's why I go back to what I said initially. I would love to know what a good off season means. What do you think it means? I mean, what could he show them in the off season? Is it just a matter of how he shows up on March 1st?
My guess is that they have something that they want him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they want him down in Lakeland or in California with his hitting coaches or whatever, working on that specific stuff on a regular basis and giving them, regular progress updates. And that's the only thing I can think of. I don't think they mean like, hey, we're going to, I don't know what else they could even mean, really, honestly. Like, we want you to go out and learn German in the off season, which who knows, maybe, in a weird Joe Madden, Phil Jackson sort of Zen master way that might actually help him, but maybe he's up in the box thinking in German instead of English. I do want to get this here from Shawnee Pat in the Hat. Very, very nice and generous. Thank you very much, Shawnee.
Thank you, sir.
No questions. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart. 47-year-old fan, and this was one of the most inconceivably fun Tiger seasons of my life by a mile, and this group made it so. John, we appreciate the $10. We appreciate everybody coming and joining us for all this stuff. It is a fun community. It's not the same without you guys discussing it. We could talk ourselves in circles, but it's a lot more fun when you guys ask us questions and make funny comments and distract us with your nonsense in the chat. So thank you very much.
What he said, it was such a fun, especially these last couple of months, but really the whole season. It was a very fun season, and we all needed it. I think we needed a kind of an injection of fun compared to what some of the last few years were. And I put a tweet out this weekend after the last game about kind of comparing the fun of the 35-5 start in 84 with the fun of this last 2 months stretch in 24. And I think some people took it the wrong way, that I meant that this club was as good, and no, they weren't. Okay. That was the 84 team was one of the best Tiger teams in history, maybe the best. But it was just the enjoyment factor of these last 2 months was off the charts. It was just a lot of fun every night. I mean, you could just look forward to every single game. They were doing, there was a different hero around every corner, it seemed like, and they won some unbelievably crazy games. And, it's definitely a group that, I think we'll always remember, even though they were out of it in the ALDS.
Yeah, I think I understood what you were talking about. That those early 80s Tigers teams had a lot of talent, a lot of expectations. Not quite 35-5, but the idea of that was that every now and then in sports, something that can happen, and it seems even more rare now because we've got thousands of projections and we're all analyzing these things and all the data at different points. Sometimes crazy stuff just happens, and the unexpected can happen, and a team goes on a 2-month heater. It doesn't make any sense until it does, because they keep doing it. And that's what we saw this year. It was an incredibly rare thing. I don't even know how, what you compare it to in other sports. It's like maybe it's kind of an extended, Cinderella run in the NCAA tournament, right? Where like this team is, they got past the first round, and then by the Final Four, they're like, oh man, they're actually pretty good.
George Mason.
Yeah, George Mason, or was it Florida Atlantic the one year, or the,
Butler.
People dunking. Yeah, what was the one out of Chicago with sister 400-year-old Jean?
Loyola,
yeah. That's like that, or I don't know, like an amateur making it to like the final day in a major in golf, something like that. Just one of those stories where like you can't believe it, and then it happens. And obviously, we would have wanted them to go all the way, but just getting where they got was remarkable. And I mean, 2 weeks before the end of the season, we're like, I don't know, can they do it? It seems unlikely. And then they go sweep everybody. It's like, well, all right.
Yeah.
We were the Oral Roberts of MLB this year, says Shawnee Pet in the Hat. Yeah, that's what it feels like, right? Like just out there. a magical run. And I don't know. Like I go back and forth with using the word magic because I do think baseball sometimes does have that. But you also know that it wasn't just like, a ton of luck. They had a plan and they executed it, and it came out well. But
That was one thing about the presser. Going back to that, it was interesting. There was an answer that Hinch gave today, talking about everything right down, all the little details, right down to the nutrition of the team. And I was thinking, boy, it's like he was listening to Raj, because how many times has Raj kind of listed out all those small things that they've invested time and money in. And you can see by Hinch bringing it up in that forum, he believes in it too. And the Tigers are getting some payback from those moves.
Yeah, and I think that was another interesting report. Part of the comments from Scott Harris was, as fans, we take spending money on players, on free agents, as like the ultimate / only sign of the investment in the team and what they're doing. And Harris brought up, and you can do all this and sign players too, but all the money they're spending on infrastructure and new plane and nutrition and a new Dominican academy and all the technology and the coaches and stuff, all that stuff does matter. And I think we've seen clearly over the last 2-3 years, the development in the minor leagues, the improvement from players. I think it has paid off. Now you just want to see it supplemented a little bit with some people from outside the organization. And that was another thing that they talked about was they feel like they really are becoming a place that players feel like they can come to and get better.
Yeah.
And there is a little bit of track record of that now, right? Carson Kelly had a very good season. Flaherty was amazing. Lorenzen had a pretty good year last year. I mean, it doesn't always work out. Matthew Boyd broke, but then he came back this year. And Maeda, we'll see. But I think I don't know. There's been a lot of good progress, as we said. The one thing you don't want to do is get complacent or just try to not complacent so much, but feel like you can do it again next year with the same level of effort, or just sit back and think, okay, and then our players are going to get one step better. Yeah, because we saw this year that doesn't happen.
Right, some will, some won't.
Yeah, and I don't know. It might be fun to go through and think about who's going to regress next year and who's going to improve. Maybe not fun, but I remember heading into last year thinking that Rodgers and Torkelson were the two most likely candidates to regress, and then they went. So I don't know. I would hope it's not Riley Green, but I mean, when you're the best hitter, there's a chance.
Yeah, I suppose there is, but I have a feeling that he still has growth. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. I think the big one, if they can really get Meadows to tap into just a little bit more power, because with that big frame, there should be more power lurking there, and he shows little blurbs of it at times.
Yeah.
But he hit great the last couple months, but now just a few more homers, and that guy could be an all-star.
Yeah, and I down the stretch, I never felt like he was a guy who, every now and then would look rough in it at bat, but he never felt terribly overmatched. Like he was battling a lot and didn't seem. He got a fair amount of hits off left-handed pitching, and worked walks and stuff. So yeah, like I'm just looking at his overall numbers this year. So counting the postseason, 18 home runs and 31 steals overall the course of the season.
He had 18 home runs?
Well, eight in the minors. I'm counting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, 8 in Toledo and 19 steals in Toledo, and then 10 home runs counting the playoffs in the big leagues and 12 steals. So yeah, you get a full year of Parker Meadows playing the way he did the final 2 months. Yeah. I mean, that's probably all-star level performance. It doesn't guarantee him an all-star berth, but
right.
That would be a huge upgrade. Kerry Carpenter, we had a couple questions about Kerry Carpenter. You go ahead.
Oh no, well, I'm really interested. Sweeney. Is how much time are they going to invest in him next year? How much does he earn? I guess maybe that's a better way of saying it. And all the gobbledygook that Harris did mention about Baez today.
Yeah.
What does that really mean? Is that going to be some kind of platoon between those guys? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where I do you Sweeney, you see the tools that are there. You see the solid defense. You see his above average speed. You see the above average raw power, and then you see him look completely overmatched at times in the box. He's a guy that definitely looked overmatched and was aggressive to a fault at times,
Yeah.
and his swing itself looks a little rough.
Yeah.
Like it's just the swing path, but who knows how much they can actually work on that. We've seen you look at Riley Green, you don't necessarily notice it in person, but you look at his ground ball numbers, they're down like 7-8% from 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make subtle adjustments to your swing plane, I think, and in what pitches you swing at to launch a little bit better. And again, Sweeney, and let me look, how many plate appearances did he really have? Because he came up on August 15th.
Yeah.
And it just so happened, he basically was the everyday shortstop down the stretch. So he ended up with, let's see, 119 plate appearances in the regular season and 26 more in the playoffs.
I was going to say 120. I would have sounded so smart.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's hardly any time at all. That's another tough situation, and it's one that we have to consider because I don't know if you can head into next year just penciling him in as your starting shortstop. At the same time, he feels like a guy you want to give more opportunities to. So
Yeah.
I don't really know how they balance that. Do they go out and sign Willie Adames? Then fine, you'll find a place for Trey Sweeney. But I don't think they're going to do something like that because they already have $75 million in Javi Baez in the books. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
It's going to come down to, are they satisfied with being a pitching first team again? And are they able to build a staff similar to this year's that can carry the load versus, continuing to let these younger hitters develop and knowing that there are going to be peaks and valleys to that? It's going to be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, well, I mean, that kind of goes back to, 2 years ago when they were earmarking at bats for the young guys, right?
Yeah.
And that was one of the lighter moments of the press conference. I mean, there were a couple of them where AJ Hinch talked about, getting younger guys in for the big league camp, and Scott Harris was like, a couple of years ago, I talked about prospects and he couldn't stop rolling his eyes, and now he can't wait for these guys to get here. And Hinch called him out by name, which was
that was surprising.
He was like, talking about Max and Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal, and they mentioned Lorenzo, and so I don't know. It's interesting to think that Hinch seems to be pretty excited about some of the young guys in the system, which is that's fun.
And if the manager knows them on a first name basis at this point, that's going to be really interesting. If they get off to hot starts, when is he going to get in Harris's ear about keep moving them up?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we were writing over in the minor league site, and hope people have checked it out if they haven't already. We did, we've done a number of articles. Raj did something on Bo Brisky, did something about the press conference today. We also did our sort of season end awards, and we did our pitcher of the year, which was Jaden Ham, and we did our hitter of the year, which we picked Hao-Yu Lee over Max Clark. It was very close. There were only 3 of us voting, and so what happened was Raj and Jerry both had Max Clark first, but I didn't have him in my top 3. I had him 4th.
Okay.
And it was for me, it was I just gave more weight to the guys who, like, Max Clark finished with like a 129 WRC plus, which is great. But Clark or McGonigal and Hao-Yu Lee were both above 140. They just didn't play quite as much because they both got hurt. And I was like, well, I want to give those guys credit. It's not their fault they got hurt. And maybe I don't know. I mean, staying healthy is a skill, and Max Clark stayed healthy his entire first season, which was really good.
Yeah.
And then I threw Gage Workman in there because I thought he just had a really good season. Now you can argue about his prospect viability, but so Clark finished second. Hao-Yu Lee finished first. I wish Raj were here to talk about it. He actually got to talk to Scott Harris about Hao-Yu Lee today.
Oh,
like one-on-one.
Nice.
But yeah. So one of the other things about those young guys, and Clark and McGonigal are like this, and Hao-Yu Lee's like this too. They're very, very, like, there's a personality to them. They're baseball rats who are very competitive. And I said earlier today, like, Hao-Yu Lee, like, if you were going to put money on the next Tigers player to charge the mound, I'd put it on Hao-Yu Lee. He is not
Really?
afraid of anybody. Yeah, like he's the sort of guy who would do like an Amir Garrett and take on the entire dugout of another team. He plays with a lot of fire. He's very aggressive in all aspects. So, um,
Cool.
yeah, I mean, we were talking. I would love to see how Yuli play third base regularly next year. I think he can. I just that they haven't had him do that suggests there's something there that I don't see that they do. But that would be the answer short term, maybe to some of their issues. Not like I don't know. He's not going to come up and be a 35 home run, power bat. But he's a guy who could come up and is a right-handed bat, which they need, and
Yes.
he does a little bit of everything. So that would be helpful. But so that's in their consideration too. I think where maybe they don't necessarily sign a super long-term third baseman, or maybe they don't sign a third baseman at all. They sign a first baseman and have Vierling play third base until Yuli is available. It depends on how much they think he can affect the team in the future.
Sure. I personally don't see the big signing.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. But the subtle moves they make will be very fascinating because it affects those guys who are already now in AA, and they have to have in their, on their radar to plug into the lineup. So yeah, these could be some short-term placeholder moves, but not placeholder, but placeholder for a team that might have some expectations to compete. A lot of times we talk about placeholders. That's because the team's going to finish fourth and they suck and are waiting on young guys. But this is kind of different. They're coming off of this season. They're going to want to do it again in some fashion. So, he's going to have to balance between what they see 3 years from now and what they need on the field in April.
Yeah, I mean that's the tough part about being a GM, right? We talked about, theoretically this was the easy part. Just because it took Al Avila forever and he didn't get it done doesn't mean that this was should have been this agonizing for Tigers fans. Now obviously they were not in a terribly good shape when Avila took over, but the everything else behind the scenes wasn't there that has helped with Harris. A couple questions here. Mitch said if he gets a call up, does Max Clark play right field with Meadows in center? I would think so. He would probably play one of the corners. It depends on which one you'd prefer. Left is actually, I think, a little bit bigger overall. Either way, it's a spacious outfield, and having both of those guys in the outfield is going to be an absolute luxury. So
especially with Green out there as well, basically 3 center fielders. That's a pretty nice luxury. That is something to have in your tool bag.
Yeah, and all interesting left-handed bats with a lot of different skills. So that's fun to think about. Down the line, who knows? Maybe one of these guys gets traded. Yeah, but what else do we say?
Isn't there a Carpenter question?
Yeah, there were a couple of Carpenter questions, and it was one of them. Let's see, was Michael Meyer said Carpenter is a person who may drop off. It's possible. The thing that only worries about me with Carpenter is he keeps getting injured every year.
Yeah. Well, for him, 2 years ago, or last season, not this season, last season, I thought he was really on top of the high fastball. Mm-hmm. I thought he was really, he pounded a few out. It didn't overmatch him. This year, it seemed like he was really going after a lot of high heat.
Yeah.
And wasn't quite as effective with it. So I think that's something I'd love to see him work on, because they're going to keep pounding him up there until he lays off. But overall, couldn't ask for a whole lot more other than to stay healthy. He didn't get the opportunity to hit lefties. I'm still a little amazed by that at times, because he did it in the minors, right? I mean, he was not overmatched.
In the minors,
obviously, Hinch knows more than us, and they see what they see from the dugout. But you'd like to see him at least get the opportunity. But again, they balance with winning. You do what you got to do. But
yeah, it does feel like that they should give Carpenter the opportunity to face lefties. I don't know if it's a situation where they just feel like they need a more complete lineup, and if they have a couple more good right-handed hitters, then they wouldn't be afraid to have Carpenter face the occasional lefty, because they don't have to worry about, the lefties. If they bring in a lefty to face Carpenter, they're not going to want to face whoever's right behind him with a lefty who Tyler O'Neill, murders left-handed pitching or something like that. So maybe that's a situation. It does. again, that's kind of like the how you lay at third base thing. Like, well, it seems like they should do this, but they haven't, so they must know something. It's Justin and Malloy not playing first base. Like, why haven't we tried this yet? But yeah, I mean, that's the big question with Carpenter. But that dude has thrived on people kind of not thrived on it, but like every time people are questioning him, like, oh, he's not really a prospect, and he comes up and he hits, and he like hits some more, and then he hits even more.
Yeah,
He's like one of the top 5 hitters against right-handed pitching this year. It's hard to ask for more from him. So I don't know, but yeah, I guess he theoretically would be a candidate for regression just because I don't think he's going to keep up that 170, 180 WRC plus against the right-handed pitching, but who knows?
you never know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got a question here from Connor Foreman. He said, "Will Owen Hall be like a Job type pitcher, and will Job be a starter next year?" Now, Owen Hall was their 2nd round pick this year.
Yep.
And then Scheffelbein was their 3rd round pick. I would not ever say anything about high school pitching immediately until you see him go out there and perform. Remember, Jackson Job was not Jackson Job his first year. He struggled with home runs. He struggled in a number of ways down in low A, and it took him until he got injured and remade his arsenal and all that stuff where he really became the Jackson Job we see now. I like Owen Hall's arm a lot. I think there's a lot to work with there, but we saw with some of the young high school pitchers that the Tigers took last year, the struggles. Paul Wilson was really struggled down in the complex league, and nobody really saw it except for the super nerds who watched the bootleg streams down there. But he looks like a guy who's several years away from even like full season ball. Wow. And sometimes that happens with college guys or high school guys. At the same time, there's no reason why he can't make a huge developmental leap this offseason and figure it out next year. Like it's so tough to say with high school guys. The best performer out of all the high school arms they drafted was Jonathan Rogers, who was, I think, their 20th round pick. They signed for like $50,000 or whatever, maybe 150.
150 bucks.
His stuff doesn't jump off the page, but he pitched really well all year. It's just hard to tell. But yeah, I've got good feeling about Owen Hall. I just want to go out and I want him to go out and do it. Really, you can never tell with these young guys.
Yeah. What was this? Matt McLean from the Reds.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, the Reds have a lot of talent. They could probably swing some kind of trade. Matt McLean was out all year. Shoulder issue, I believe. But when he was up the year before, he was really a solid rookie, man. He didn't really have any rookie slumps. He just got plopped into the lineup and produced. So I don't know if the Reds are really looking to trade him, what they would want. But, the Tigers do have the depth right now where they could probably make some moves like that.
Yeah, the trade options will be fascinating. And one of the tough things for us to speculate right now is which teams are out there. There's always a team or two that doesn't necessarily seem like they should be rebuilding or retooling that actually does. Like, to me, I'm thinking of like the Braves or somebody like that like, oh, it feels like they have their entire roster locked in. And then, I don't know, would they trade Marcell Ozuna? He's in they've got a player option or a mutual option or something like that. Just a team like that you don't even expect to make a player available. And like, I don't know, maybe last year we could have foreseen that Milwaukee was going to look to move Mark Canha. But it does. I feel like the Tigers might make a move somewhat like that, but maybe up a notch, if it makes sense. Like,
yes, it does make sense.
Like, not necessarily, going and finding a player from another team who might have a little bit of money owed to him. I don't know, 15 to 20 million or something like that. That team doesn't necessarily want to pay him. He's not loudly on the trade market, but then 5 days after the World Series, the Tigers go get him. Something like that. Who that player is, I don't know. Like I said, maybe Marcell Ozuna. Let's see, what is Raj doing? He just sent. Oh, he's out with his son and his brother. It looks like. Yeah, I mean, and so the one thing about next year's team that Scott Harris explicitly said is he said he felt like they got too left-handed down the stretch, and they probably need to go get a right-handed bat, which we all knew, but he said it, so now we can really start speculating. And then he also said pitching, which again we knew, but he said it. So those are the two things, and I mean, we've talked about it before, but there are a fair amount or there is a fair amount. There are a bunch of right-handed bats on the market, and a lot of them have power. And so we can kind of go through all of them if we want to and discuss what we like about them, what we don't. But like you said, there's going to be plenty of time this offseason to do that sort of speculation. But I don't know if there's anybody you want to talk about. I have a whole list of them.
Well, I have some interest. I mean, obviously, Santander from Baltimore. I mean,
Yeah,
you got 40 home run power, right?
Yep.
Or did you have 39? Whatever it was. It was
I think it's 43, I think.
Was it 4? Okay, so he's 40 plus power. Doesn't mean he would do that again next year, but we know it's in there. He's the kind of guy. He's not a terrible defensive player, so I mean, you're not wedging him out there and just hoping for the best. I mean, he can play. I would think that for whatever reason, he doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to need a 6-year deal either. So I was wondering if there's some kind of nice mid-range deal for him that they could feel comfortable with and bring that kind of a bat in.
Yeah, so I'm looking 44 home runs this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a perfect player, right? So he hit 235 with a 308 on base percentage this year. So it was a lot of power, not a ton else. He didn't strike out a ton though, so it was a 20% strikeout rate. But yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right. He doesn't. He's not. I don't know how to say it. Where like he's not a foundational piece like Juan Soto or even maybe an Alex Bregman, right?
Yeah.
But he's probably the best or one of the 2 or 3 best kind of mercenary bats, if that makes sense. It's somebody you go and you give him a decent chunk of money, but you don't
like Teoscar Hernandez or something.
Yeah, Teoscar Hernandez is another one. Like you're not theoretically you're not putting up a giant poster outside of Comerica Park of Anthony Santander if you sign him. Like people are excited, but you're not making him like the focus of the entire team. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a great option. I'm looking. I wrote down all these right-handed hitters or switch hitters and their isolated power this year. And Santander was 225. Teoscar Hernandez 229. Tyler O'Neill 270. So, I mean, that's an interesting guy that I know Rogers talked about him a ton, but
yeah. Well, you put that kind of isolated power into the Tigers lineup, you notice it. I mean, obviously, that was something that, not just in the regular season, but in the playoffs where home runs mean a lot. You have a bat in there who's lurking, other teams need to plan for that. And that extra little bit of dash of power would have meant a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to relitigate all the Cleveland series, but we talked about the OPSs of their top 4 hitters and Brian Rocchio, who hit a home run tonight.
Damn him.
Curse his family's name. But yeah, just another bat or two would have made a world of difference for that team down the stretch and into the playoffs. Just another guy. We saw it, that how many times they had guys in scoring position and just couldn't do it. And there's no guarantee that signing a bunch of guys will help you do that. Aaron Judge is not lighting the world on fire in the playoffs, but I don't know. You just feel like the more wax at the piñata, the more likely you are going to come up with a big hit.
Exactly right. Now, a lot of people, you mentioned Adames. Obviously we've all seen it for months and months. A lot of people talk about Alex Bregman.
Yep.
And he had a little bit of a slow first half, but he came back in the second half this year and was a lot better. Already pushing 30, right? He's 30 years old.
I think he's older. He might be 31 by the time they sign him.
Yeah. So I don't know why. To me, he always just seems like a young guy to me.
Yeah.
I was surprised to hear that when I heard that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of like Ian Kinsler to Alex Bregman's game, where just a grinder who you feel like you're going to get the most out of him for the most part until he just the skills just are gone. The question is, when are those skills going to be gone? Right. I don't know. Like he's going to get a big deal. AJ Hinch is certainly familiar with him, right? And I think his personality would be outstanding for this team. I think there's a lot of fits in a lot of different ways. It's just a matter of how much of a financial commitment are they willing to make in terms of years and salary.
You got to believe he's going to want 6.
I would think at least, yeah. And we'll probably hear he wants, that it'll come out like, oh, he wants a 10-year deal, things like that, and then he'll sign for 8 and 240 or something like that.
That's what I was
And
thinking. 30 mil. Yeah.
so I don't know.
And Tigers can do it. I mean,
Yeah.
financially, I believe Harris. They have the wherewithal to do it. I believe he'll have permission to get who he wants if they truly believe in it.
Yeah.
But the thing about it now is, again, with the young guys they have coming, how many long commitments are they going to want to give out based on how they're carrying Baez right now? Hopefully that's not going to scare them out of, because Harris didn't sign that guy, and that's fine. So I don't know. To give a guy who's 31 a 6-year deal seems out of character for Scott Harris to me. I don't know. We'll see, but we don't know enough about him yet.
Well, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, and it's the sort of thing where we talk about it, like, I think Chris Ilitch would okay something like that if Scott Harris wanted to do it, but I'm skeptical that Scott Harris wants to do it. So I'm looking right now. Yeah, so Bregman he'll turn 31 basically right as next season starts, March 30th. So yeah, with signings like this, that you're in for it at the end of the deal, right?
Yeah.
That's always been the case with everybody. Like these last several years are going to be a bummer. You're trying to avoid the ones where the first several years are a bummer too, like Javi Baez and Jordan Zimmerman or whatever, deals like that. But yeah, it feels like, and I hate to keep coming back to this because it's not terribly exciting, but it feels like they're going to operate like the Brewers and the Guardians, where they might sign somebody to a long-term deal, but it's going to be somebody who's homegrown and somebody they're signing to an extension at a very young age, like a Colt Keith or a Jackson Churio, whereas they're just not going to hinder their flexibility at all with long-term deals. We'll see. But yeah, I would be kind of stunned if they go out there and sign somebody to any deal longer than 4 years.
Yeah.
And maybe not even that.
Because I think what you're going to end up with at the end of the deal, if you get Bregman for 6, the last couple of years, you're looking at late stage Evan Longoria.
Yeah.
Right. Like, a guy who can help you out here and there, but who's not the player he once was.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you have to. So what did Matt Chapman just sign for, right? Because he is a year older. He's like a year older than Bregman.
He got 5, didn't he?
Did he? It was. I'm trying to look up. Trying to see what the deal, because it was like 5 and 180. It was a lot.
It was.
Let's see. Somebody probably knows it, but Chapman signs extension. Looking at the old Google, 6-year, $151 million contract. Okay. So Bregman is going to want more years and more money.
Yeah,
and he probably should get it because he's a more complete player, I think.
Agreed.
So yeah, but as we said, he's not the only one on the market. It'll be really interesting to me to see. I haven't gone and looked and thought about, okay, every other team that's going to be looking for these kind of right-handed bats, because there 8 to 10 of them that would all be acceptable to sign. And it's one of those things where we've seen in the past where sometimes teams go out and get the guy, they have the guy they want, and they go get him immediately, like the first day you can.
Strike quick.
And then other times teams wait till the very end and they get the player who didn't get the deal he wanted and he has to settle for something. And then you end up getting the player who's super upset and has to go out and prove it again. And then signs it, it's always, I mean, that's a gamble if you try to wait it out, but sometimes it does feel like that you end up with the best deal going that way. But I don't know. You have to have a good pulse in the market.
Is there a guy out there this year who's like this late stage Justin Turner, who's kind of the mercenary who might take 1 year and they hope they get a real good year out of him?
Yeah, I mean, there are some players out there like that. I mean, Justin Turner, he was actually a guy I could consider, but he's like 40 now, and but there are some, I don't know, like guys I wouldn't feel great about them signing, but I could see it working out for 1 year deal. Like a Rhys Hoskins at first base. He didn't have a very good year this year, but he's had solid years before. He hits for power. He's a right-handed bat. I don't know, like Paul DeJong, if you want to go get a right-handed shortstop.
Yeah.
It's not exciting. He doesn't walk, but he hits for power.
He'll show some power. Yeah.
I think, maybe Eugenio Suarez is kind of like that.
Yeah.
Not respected that way. I feel like he'll get at least a 3-year deal from somebody, but maybe not. Maybe somebody doesn't believe it because he's been doing it in Arizona and they think the ball jumps there and they want to see him prove it somewhere else. I don't know. Teoscar Hernandez signed a 1-year deal this year, right?
Yes, but I think he played his way out of that.
Yeah, I would say so. But
Yeah.
and then the other guys I'm looking at. So you've got, Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana is out there. He crushes left-handed pitching. He can play first base.
Yeah.
He's not going to cost you much. He certainly won't sign for more than 1 year. Paul Goldschmidt is out there.
Wow.
He's he's kind of a broken down husk of what he once was.
Yeah.
But maybe you've got some ideas for his bat speed or whatever he needs. I don't know. It's yeah. And then so lots of people. We got people talking about Ha-Seong Kim, Gino Suarez, Hoskins is a player option with the Brewers. Does he? I don't know. Is he going to take that? How much money is it?
I don't know.
He didn't have a very good year, so he probably would take it. But I got to see what it 2025 player option, 2026 mutual option. So 17 million. He may be best off taking that. Yeah, given what happened to him this year for sure.
Yeah.
So
how about this? Yeah. Tell me this: if we make Chris Brown the GM for a day,
all right,
you have to do an extension for Riley Green or Tarek Skubal, and you can only do one.
Oh, I gotta go Riley Green just because pitchers all break. But
so
boy, it's true, and with that one, and Riley Green, did not have a great playoff performance, but I just keep trying to remind myself, man, he's not even 24 yet, and Skubal's several years older. He's a pitcher. It wouldn't shock me if Tarek Skubal continues to dominate for the next 10 years. He's always reminded me a lot of Max Scherzer in a way. He already has multiple injuries on his arm though, which makes you feel like, and he throws so damn hard.
Yep.
I worry that he's certainly sturdy and strong enough. Like I said, it wouldn't shock me, but I think with the way pitchers break now, if you're gonna pick between one, I'd go Riley Green, position player.
I would go right along with you. We'd be marching in lockstep there. I for all the reasons you mentioned, I think, and also you're going to get 2 more years out of Skubal. Those could be the best 2 years of his career, and then he moves on, and that's okay. A lot of it depends too if they feel they can really compete in these next 2 years. If this is the window to start doing things, and you got Skubal while he's still youngish and healthy. And then at the end of that, we move on, but you have Riley Green locked up until his 30th birthday would be pretty good.
Yeah. And I don't know, who knows what's going to go on with Skubal. I do enjoy that we're not necessarily talking about trading him in the offseason again, because it seems like, no, there's no reason to do that at all.
No reason to do that now.
Now maybe everything goes wrong on the trade deadline next year, but that even then I feel like, no, you give it, maybe one more go, or I don't know, trade him before the next year, or keep him. And you know what? If you lose him, you give him the qualifying offer, you use him, you lose him, the draft pick, but at least you had 2 more years with Tarek Skubal as your ace, and you tried.
Yeah.
There's nothing. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I wouldn't. Like I said, if they go and make a good run of it in 2 years and they don't win, I can't be upset that they didn't trade Skubal at the deadline, right? Like, is anybody really upset this year that they didn't trade him at the deadline? We didn't get Jackson Holiday and Kobe Mayo. Instead, they got to playoffs. So I don't know. That's not a. I don't know. That'll be tough. That's what the GMs get paid for. But pitching. We don't necessarily need to get to the pitching just yet. Scott Harris said, somebody asked him, I think it was Mike Stone said, are you going to have money to spend if you want to? And he said, yes. People think that way, but I'll have the money. If we identify somebody we like, I have the money to go get them. If we identify somebody we like, we have the prospects to go get them. which was kind of an interesting thing. He said,
It was.
I think we've built the farm system up to the point where we've earned, we have the ability to go trade for somebody. And he even said that we would go trade for somebody, spend money and prospects, which is would again be kind of that Marcell Ozuna situation, right? Where you're trading some prospects and then taking on, I don't know how much he's getting paid, $25 million, something like that. So that's interesting. And there are very enticing trade options out there theoretically, but again, we don't know who's available. But a lot of people keep bringing up Brent Rooker.
Yeah,
who
they
would
do.
be an ideal right-handed power hitter. He's been very fun to follow on Twitter too. he shares his opinions on pitches and hitting and stuff. That's like, well, that's fun. Not that you would give him any extra money for that or whatever, but I always like it when baseball players are also just big baseball fans and can't stop thinking about baseball and talking about baseball. That's like my favorite thing about Max Clark this year was watching him tweet along. So go get a baseball guy. People have also talked about Yandy Diaz, which would solve some first base, third base problems, but he's a guy. He's just never hit for enough power. He hits the ball very hard, but it just doesn't go out over the fence, and that's certainly not going to happen.
Guys, ground balls. He's just shy of being really good. Right? He's not even really good. He's just kind of good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's got to be 30 something now, right? I mean,
I think he might be like 32.
But again, can you get him for 2 years? For 2 years, Yandy Diaz, he's an upgrade of he's a better hitter than Matt Vierling.
He's 33.
Okay.
He's due $8 million next year.
That's nothing.
And there's a 2026 club option for another. I don't know what the money is there, but yes, it's not much. So yeah, and you just look at his WRC plus 120 this year, which would be great for the Tigers, but it was 163 last year, 145 the year before that, 110 in 2021. So he's been a well above average offensive player. It's just kind of dependent on some BABIP and things like that.
No, he's going to draw walks too. He's going to he's on base. He's usually around 340, 350, 360, all in that range.
Yeah. So it was 341 this year. Last year, 410. And the year before 401. So you worry a little bit about maybe catching him on the downslope, but again, it's Tampa. They don't like to pay guys, although he's not terribly expensive. So that's another option. Other random names I was looking at, Seiya Suzuki. I don't know. Are the Cubs? What are they going to do? Who knows what the Cubs are going to do? They have a ton of prospects that are coming up soon. They've already given this guy, Suzuki, a pretty solid contract, but what do they need? What do they want? He's 30 years old, right-handed hitter, outfielder. What did he do this year? Hit 283 with 21 homers and 16 steals, 138 WRC plus. You don't necessarily want to give up a guy like that. Let's see, 5 years and $85 million. So he's making $17 million a year for the next 2 seasons. I don't know. Just trying to think of right-handed hitters that they could go out and target. Who knows who is available?
I need to investigate too, because I was thinking about it today and I didn't get around to it. I got busy with a couple things, but I wonder who's coming out of Japan or Korea. Any right-handed hitters?
That's a good question. Yeah, I have not looked at that either. Yeah, that's I'd be
that would be that'd be something they haven't tapped. I mean, we heard the rumors last year that they were dabbling in that market for the pitcher.
Yeah,
it didn't happen. But if they are serious about opening all avenues of talent up, they haven't really done a lot in Asia. If they could find a hitter over there, that would be quite the coup.
Yeah, I'm looking right here. So is there 2025 on here? Oh, Kazuma Okamoto, a first baseman from Japan. Right-handed hitting, right. He's been one of the most productive. I'm reading this from Fangraphs.
Okay.
He's been one of NPB's most productive power hitters since debuting in 2018. He has 6 straight seasons of clubbing 30 or more home runs, including a 2023 campaign in which he hit 41 of them while slashing 278, 374, 584. Good for a 178 WRC plus.
All right.
Potent contact and power combo. Swing is a little bit more movement and noise, but it's similar to Tommy Pham's, and so forth and so on. He's seen time at third and first base and isn't especially good at either.
He's a 2013 Tiger.
Let's see. So he hits well enough that he'll be a meaningfully good role player in Major League Baseball if he comes over during his mid-20s physical peak, probably a tad shy of an average corner infield regular. So there's that.
Yeah.
We could look into it more. So I see somebody mentioned Ryan Mountcastle in the chat here. Yeah, it's Michael Meyer. Let's see. The O's are down on him, and he has a couple years of control. Not a true Harris control, the zone guy, and down years since Baltimore. But Baltimore, oh, I see. But could be a 30-40 home run guy, fairly cheap. I will point out that I actually saw this earlier, that Mountcastle finished with the same WRC plus as Matt Vierling this year, 108.
Ah.
And that's one of those things where, like, would I be satisfied with Matt Vierling as the first baseman next year? Probably not. But if it meant that they signed like Adames or Bregman or Suarez to play third base, I'd be like, well, all right, whatever. Like, you got Matt Vierling there, and if Torkelson explodes, then he could play first base, and Vierling can be an outfielder. Like, that's certainly an option they have. So, I don't know. Matt Vierling is a solid, steady, slightly above average player that gives you some options, and that's probably the best feature of him.
I think at the end of the day, it's just good to know there are plenty of right-handed bats. It'll just be interesting to see which one entices Harris, if any.
Yeah.
And who they can find who wants to be in Detroit. But I was really happy to hear, actually, because to me, that they're targeting more pitching. I think it's important. As good as they were this year, as good as the chaos worked down the stretch, they need more arms for that rotation. It made sense. They talked about they're not going to, convert fully to bullpen games, right? It's something for their tool belt, as he called it. And that makes a lot of sense. I would think that now they have a lot of confidence in going that route. If you have let's say you've played 24 games in 25 days and you want to give the rotation a day off or push everybody back a day or something, you mix in a bullpen day and they can do that with a lot of confidence now.
Yeah, I don't know. They've demonstrated a lot of maneuverability and ability to get players to execute, which is hugely important. And yeah, I mean, I think I think Harris came out and said, yeah, we want a 5-man rotation. So we know at least 3 of those names probably. I mean, Skubal, cross your heart or whatever. Nobody gets hurt, but it's Skubal, Olsen. I think Job will probably maybe put his name in pencil, if not ink, but he's probably going to have a really good shot to start the year in the rotation.
Yep.
And then after that, you've got an abundance of options. Actually, you got Montero. You can bring him back up. You got Casey Mize, Matt Manning are possible. Kenta Maeda is still on the roster. Not Justin Hermloy. Sawyer Gibson Long should be back from injury. So he's a potential option there. Brant Herter, Ty Madden. Again, this is pitching. These guys break, so some of them aren't going to make it, but they have a bunch of options. But that doesn't preclude them from signing 1 to 2 guys. It wouldn't shock me if they basically do last year's offseason. Yeah. Sign 2 starters, a couple bullpen arms, and at least 1 hitter.
And I like what you said before. A better hitter than Canna. Upgrade on Mark Canna. But otherwise, I agree with you. I've seen a lot of people say, they'll bring Flaherty back. I don't see that.
I don't think so either. I think
he's going to want 4 years now, right? Easy.
Yeah, and he'll get it. Especially pitching the way he did, in the playoffs and down the. He had a terrific year. He's proven that he's a guy who can take instruction, and he'll get a long deal. And honestly, if I'm the Tigers, I would be slightly worried about giving him a long-term deal, just knowing what he had to get 2 back injections when he was with you. I'm sure they have a pretty detailed look at his medicals and know what might be coming down the road. But there are other options. We talked about a bunch of the other options. I mentioned Nick Pivetta before. I think he would be kind of an interesting target. Sean Manaea has made a lot of money, I think, this year too. He might be an interesting. I don't know how many lefties you want. Somebody mentioned Shane Bieber before. I don't know when he's coming back. He's hurt. That would probably have to be a 2-year deal. I think Luis Severino. Walker Buehler is the guy that get mentioned a lot. That would make a ton of sense, particularly if he's a 1-year deal guy. But I do think Luis Severino was a guy that they targeted last offseason. I think they wanted him before Flaherty, and it didn't work out. He went to the Mets, but he'll be back on the market. He's another guy they could go after. Andrew Heaney is a guy I've brought up before, and he doesn't excite you really. He's kind of a Matthew Boyd, but he actually had kind of a solid year. It's a lefty with what did he? I want to say he pitched like 150 innings, 160 innings. which is not all that common anymore.
Yeah.
Let me look. Okay. 31 games, 160 innings, in 147 last year. So basically strikeout an inning, 2.3 walks per nine. It was a 4.28 ERA. So not sexy, an average pitcher, but
That has value these days, though.
yeah. I'm trying to think, who else do we have? Kikuchi. He made some money, I think, after the trade deadline. Although we didn't ever see him.
No.
Whoops. Michael Lorenzen is back out there. Mike Soroka is a guy that really took a step up when he moved to the bullpen. And then there are a bunch of relievers, a bunch of interesting relievers. Like there's a lot of pitching out there. They're going to come away with some interesting talent. It's just, I'd be fascinated to know how they go about, winnowing down to figure out who they really want to target.
Do you think they bring Foley's going to make about $3.5 million next year?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't use him in this series at all.
Yeah.
Hardly warmed up. Do they bring him back? Is $3 million too much to bring back a guy you must not believe in, or is he good enough? Or you bring him back.
I think they'll bring him back. That would be kind of a stunning turn of events for him to he pitched once in the postseason and then they put him on ice.
Yeah.
They also, they didn't use Hannafy either, right? Like I think there was just something about that matchup that they didn't really like, but I mean, Foley was one of their key relievers all season, and I'd be kind of stunned if they don't bring him back. The only person I'm expecting to not be back for sure is Badu. I'm gonna bring up the arbitration estimates, right?
Yeah. What's he getting? Like 1.5 or something?
And they usually do a good job. Let's see. There it is. Projected arbitration salaries for 2025. All right, here we go. I could probably even share this so people can see it if they want. I'll do that in just a second, and then we can go through and say he's getting that or he isn't. All right, share screen. Projected arbitration now. Here we go. Can we see it?
Yes.
It's not terribly big. How about that? Is that any better?
Yeah, I got it.
Whoops. All right, so we got Tarek Skubal projected to make $8 million. What do we think?
I think that's good.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll get that, and it's probably going to be more than that. But Casey Mize, $2 million. The Tigers hold a $3.1 million club option and a $10,000 buyout. That's an interesting one.
Ooh.
They're obviously they're not going to exercise that option.
Yeah.
Will they pay him $2 million even?
I would.
I think they probably will too. I mean, all things being equal, that's very inexpensive for a roughly average major league pitcher.
Yep.
Maybe he just hasn't been healthy, so you can't really count on him. But you give him one more year. Jake Rogers, $2.5 million. If Skubal's coming back, Rogers is coming back. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So they'll take that. Will Vest, $1.4 million.
All day.
I think so. Yeah. Zach McKinstry, $1.3 million. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is.
I think they'll bring him back too. Honestly.
Yeah, it depends. How many utility guys. I mean, is Sweeney going back to the minors? Is he going to play? What's Ibanez going to do? That kind of thing. It's going to be interesting.
I'm kind of 75-25 on that one. Like, I think there is a world depending on. I don't know when they have to decide this. The arbitration that doesn't usually. That's kind of later. I think usually in the off season. There's a world where they improve the roster to the point where Zach McKinstry doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
But I don't see that happening. And there it is. Yeah, Foley, $3.5 million. I mean,
that's on the cusp.
No.
Because again, if they don't believe in him, if they don't believe he can, but he got the big outs during the regular season quite often, more often than he didn't.
Yeah, and they're going to add some relief options, and I guess that's the key is are they going to add enough high leverage relievers to where Foley doesn't really even fit that role anymore?
Right.
Is he sixth inning reliever or something like that? I don't know. I mean, we already mentioned Will Vest has started, he started pitching some high leverage situations. So did Bo Brisky. They're both 1.4 million, 1.3 million here. So less than, they're both less than Foley. I don't know. That's one that I hadn't even considered. I thought for sure he'd be coming back, but I'll go 80-20 on that one. I think he's coming
Okay.
back, but it wouldn't stun me if something strange happens. I could even see a situation where they do like one of those 2-year deals with him, where it's like, I don't know, 8 million total or 7 million total with some performance incentives, something like that. But,
incentives, yeah. Agreed.
Vierling for 3 million. Harris already talked about him, being key to the roster and his flexibility. I think he's coming back. He was actually, I think, by WAR, I think he was their second best offensive player this year. And there's that Badu one, 1.6 million. Not much money at all. You know what you're getting from Badu for the most part. It's not necessarily a lot, but I don't know. The way my baseball teams work, if they can save $1.6 million, I think they will. And they've got enough other kind of utility types that they can survive without him. Unfortunately, hopefully
and they might feel they're doing him a favor by letting him go and go get some, get a place where he can play.
Yeah, and like we said before, he'll go somewhere and have an awesome spring and catch on with a team and be up and down with them, or
he might go make $2 million in Korea.
Well, I mean, we've seen, Derek Hill has been kicking around the big leagues for the last few years, and he keeps getting action, and so I think Badu will find a role. Alex Lang, 1.3 million. That's an interesting one too, because he's injured. Was it torn lat? I think. If he's significantly injured or injured enough, they might not be able to non-tender him and like sign him for less. But I don't know how that works.
I gotta say this. I did not miss Alex Lang watching him pitch.
Well, and I think that's a good point, because for as much as Scott Harris talked about it, and he even talked about it today, and he went back and talked about his talking points from his introductory press conference, and he talked about dominating the strike zone.
Yeah,
Alex Lang was the one pitcher who absolutely did not dominate the strike zone.
He avoided the strike zone.
Yes, and at times he was sort of unhittable and their best strikeout pitcher, but at other times he was, make you pull your hair out, and he didn't fit with the rest of the guys pounding the strike zone.
Yeah,
and so I mean that is an interesting case. If they feel like he's not a culture fit, as it were, then he's up there for debate. To me, it's just like all these guys are less than 1.5 million. You take them, and if things don't work out, you get rid of them. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's baseball.
It's true. Yeah,
it's less money than you spent on like a couple of TVs around the park. Andy Ibanez, 1.5 million.
Bargain.
Yeah, I think that he's a part-time player, but was very valuable throughout the course of the season. If he gets too much more expensive, I don't know. They might move on from that. But
last year he played a little outfield. He didn't play any outfield this year, did he? I don't know, very little.
He may have early in the season, a game or two, when basically everybody was hurt. When Green was out and Carpenter was out and Meadows was back in the minors. But I haven't looked. And then you got Bo Brisky, 1.3 million. He certainly looked like a guy worth that down the stretch. So
he had the manager's trust in big spots.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, he made that one poor pitch to David Fry that I'll try not to remember forever. But yeah, I mean, the number of ridiculous. I mean, I guess it wasn't a ton, but there were two very memorable, absurd situations that Brisky got the Tigers out of that he had no business getting out of. The bases loaded, nobody out against the Orioles, and Sweeney had a part in that. And then
the Jason Hayward line drive.
Jason Hayward, the ninth inning there in the Astros game. But
old BK.
Yeah, I'm gonna go pop this one up. Old BK, $9.99. Thank you for the donation. Thanks for the great info and conversation all season, guys. Do you think Dingler starts 2025 with a roster spot on the big league club? That's a good question.
I'm a yes.
I think so too. I think they were pretty pleased with his defense. And again, when we talked about Trey Sweeney, we talked about some of these other guys. I'm going to look up Dylan Dingler's plate appearances. How many he got this year? You want to guess, Yoop?
92.
Oh, very good. 87.
Ooh.
87 plate appearances for Dylan Dingler. It's hard to hit when you're playing every fourth or fifth day.
Yes.
But he certainly did a good job catching. He caught I want to say he caught the Brent Herter near perfect game against the Orioles.
Yep.
I don't know if he caught the Montero complete game shutout. I don't remember who caught that, but
I'm positive.
yeah, I,
But
I think he does.
defensively, he's solid. He's got a good arm. He showed the power in the minors this year. He hit a couple balls when he was at Tigers. We got that triple in San Francisco, and I think he'd be a nice compliment, even though he's not a left-handed batter. Nice compliment to Rogers. I see that. I don't see any catchers on the market they're going to bring in who would be better than those two.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple catches. It's like is Darno out there, Danny Jansen. There are some catchers. So Darno's got a club option for $8 million, so he's probably not. I'm looking.
If they're truly looking for an offensive upgrade,
yeah,
none of these catchers, they might be a tiny upgrade. They might be a little better, but you're not going to see the difference in the win column from it.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't think Hinch and probably Harris, for that matter, care one whit about the catcher's offense. Like, they certainly want a catcher to do something to help in some ways, whether that's walk a little bit or hit for some power, but they want them to play a great game on defense, and both of those guys do that. And don't forget that Dingler knows almost all these young pitchers.
Sure.
I'm sure that helps a little bit.
Doesn't hurt for sure.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah, they at the moment those are the only two catchers on the 40-man roster. So I think they may want to add Liam Hicks to the 40-man just as an emergency catcher, or they may want to go out and they always bring in 2 or 3 veteran catchers to spring training, and maybe one of those guys kind of hangs around. But yeah, I think I'm not terribly worried about Dingler. It was a bummer in games when he was struggling, but you give him time. It's the big leagues is hard. And let's see, was that I don't know. I mean, we talked about the pitching. We talked about all that good hitting. We talked about all sorts of good stuff. The only the only minor league stuff to get to at this point, we could discuss who they want to protect from the Rule 5 draft.
I heard Raj ask that question today. I said, "Hey, it's Raj." I heard him.
Yeah, and that was, and he again. I wish he were here. He's with us. He's at a restaurant right now. I'm trying to. Yeah. He said he talked to Scott Harris about it directly in like the hallway. They had a little time together, and they're just trying to go through and think of the players that they might have to protect. There aren't a lot that jump right off the page. Right now, I'm looking. Steven Scott, Carlos Mendoza. I mean, Steven Scott could theoretically be your, another catcher for you. He bats left-handed. That wouldn't hurt. I'm trying to think. Navigado is an option. Corey Joyce, Justice Bigby. Those guys. We've talked about Navigado a lot. We would have thought that if he was part of the plan, that he would have come up at some point this year.
Yes.
Or just for a taste, and maybe, who knows, maybe they were planning on doing that and then they accidentally got really good. And it was like, well, we'll worry about Navigado later. But none of those guys jump off the page. Bigby was a good story, just didn't hit for enough power.
Right.
He's a guy who controls the strike zone and has a good plan up there. It's just not enough power.
Just from what I saw of him here in Des Moines, he just looked like a ground ball line drive guy, and trying to punch everything the opposite way. And he got a few hits, but it didn't look very menacing.
There's a role for guys like that, but usually not when you're basically a corner outfielder only. You have to have some defensive value or speed or things like that. So we can move on from them. Let's see. We've got Tyler Madison. He was a guy that I thought we would see this year, but then blew his arm out. And that's one where you might be able to leave him unprotected just because nobody wants to wait for him. On the other hand, sometimes teams take guys who they know are injured because you only have to play like half the season, I think, to actually stick on the roster. And for a reliever, I mean,
can hide somebody out there.
Yeah, so that could be an interesting one. And when he was healthy, he was a pretty nasty, high fastball. Breaking ball at depth, change up, good. He walked a few too many guys, which is not ideal, but it was a pretty nasty mix there. So I don't know. That's an interesting one. The other, you got Chase Lee, who they acquired from Texas. And I think that was the Carson Kelly deal.
Yeah.
He had a very effective year as a reliever. It's a funky look though. He's like a low, almost a submariner. And I'm looking right here. With Toledo. 22 innings. Let's see, faced 96 batters, 31 strikeouts to 4 walks.
Ooh.
It's a 3.27 ERA, but pretty darn effective. Sometimes it's fun to have guys like that. They can come on, give a funky look.
Yeah.
But that's always, I don't know. That'll be an interesting one. You usually don't see teams trade for guys and then leave them unprotected. But I don't know. The Tigers did that with Sawyer Gipson-Long a couple years ago.
That's right.
Let's see. All right. Who else do we have here? We've got, I'm looking. Bryce Tossin, don't need to worry. Angel Reyes. Andrew Magno, probably not. Tapichi Poulin had a good year. Jack Anderson, a lot of relievers here. Freddie Pacheco is already on the 40-man, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Liam Hicks is an interesting one. I mentioned him a minute ago. Left-handed hitting catcher. Another guy, he's not terribly gifted defensively, and he doesn't have much power, but he is a huge pain in the butt in the batter's box. I think our buddy Greg Gagne pointed out that I want to say they lost their first 2 games with him as catcher and then went like 18-2 in the rest of the time when he played in Erie.
Wow. So if he's Rule 5 eligible, a left-hand hitting catcher with a little bit of ability, why wouldn't a team like the A's get him and stash him? Somebody.
I suspect that they will add him just to have that third catcher.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking, what did he do this year? Because like I said, it's not, nothing jumps off the page. He's 25 and a half, hit 260 with Texas, then 272 with after Detroit, 135 WRC plus, 16% walk rate to a 10% strikeout rate. Again, not much power.
The strike zone.
Controls the strike zone. Hit 6 home runs total, so it's an ISO under 100. But you're going to control the strike zone. That always, guys who do that, but don't hit for power, sometimes don't do that at the highest level because teams aren't scared of. But again, catcher, if you have any ability to catch and work with a pitching staff and you've got on base skills, I think, and again, like you said, left-handed bat, probably a good bet that he gets protected. There are other catchers on that roster, Eliezer Alfonso, but he's been Rule 5 eligible for like 4 years now, and they haven't protected him. Yeah. Josh Crouch, not going to happen. Jake Holton is a fun story, great hitter, good power, good defender. First baseman, not a good enough hitter, not enough power to really work out. Unfortunately, he's already 27. Chris Myers is another one who's available. Left-handed hitting, first baseman, corner outfielder, some power. I've compared him to Josh Lester before as a guy who he might get to the big leagues at some point, but I don't think he'll stick.
Right.
So that's not a guy you necessarily need to save. We can speed through these. Howie Lee, not till next year. That's good.
Good.
Gage Workman is one we talked about before. That's a toughie. He had a really good year this year. I don't think he's ever going to hit for real in the big leagues. But there's defensive versatility, there's speed, there's raw power.
Yeah, he can run.
And I don't know. that's gonna be an interesting one. I think Raj mentioned that when he talked to Harris about that, Harris was excitedly talking about Howie Lee and Rainer Castillo, and then didn't say much about Gage Workman. And who knows what, maybe that's because he doesn't want to play his hand, or maybe he just doesn't really care.
Maybe not. What do you think? Just change a slight, take a tack here. Lorenzo, is he a catcher?
I don't think he is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just checking real quick to see, does he need to be protected? He does not. I think he's got a better chance to be a catcher than Josue Briseño. Partially because he's done it at a higher level, and I also just think he moves a little bit better. Like, neither of them are fast, but Lorenzo has a little bit of more, like, I don't know, side to side agility behind the plate, but it's really raw. He's not the sort of guy that Hinch would want catching his team.
Yeah,
it's
better than Wilson Ramos.
Yeah, I think that's not the worst comparison in the world. He's just a guy right now who, when I watch him catch, I see a fair amount of kind of just lapses in focus, or a lot of balls that he should be moving to stop, where he just kind of tries to stop them with his glove.
Yeah. backhands it or
Yeah,
whatever.
and I don't know if that's just because he's big and he's tired and all that stuff, but it's one of those things where when you see a guy who doesn't do that very often, you wonder if he can be taught that sort of thing. I mean, you would think you could be, but at the same time, it's like you're a big man.
Yeah. Now, if Brasino and Lorenzo both get to AA next year,
Mm-hmm.
and one or if not both of them need to play first base.
Yeah.
Do you think that as they map out the future, does that kind of affect what they do with bringing in a first baseman this year, or is it too early to start thinking about that?
I think it's too early for that
Yeah.
for both of those guys. I mean, they're both very promising. Briseño, I think, is a better pure hitter.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got plenty of raw power. We saw he hit 3 home runs in the Arizona Fall League the other day. It was really fun, including one of them off Andrew Painter,
Yeah, I saw
who
that.
is coming back from injury, but is
Still.
one of the most talented pitchers in all of baseball. And then his third home run came off Peyton Pallette, who was you may remember from Arkansas a few years back.
Yeah, draft stock in him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Briseño, he controls the strike zone. He hits the ball hard. He's more of a line drive hitter, I would say, but with plenty of power to clear the fence, and not nearly as much swing and miss. Lorenzo is a different. I wouldn't give him nearly the same bat to ball skills, but he also controls the strike zone. He doesn't chase, and if you put a pitch that he can drive, he absolutely murders it. He's got more raw power than Briseño and more game power than Briseño. Yeah, I don't know. Like, you could do that forever. You could wait on the guys down in AA and high A and low A and never build a big league team. I think you have to go out there and address first base and possibly catching or whatever this year, and whatever happens. I think my guess is that Briseño is done catching.
Yeah.
Now I know when we talked to Ryan Garco last year, he thought that he had a chance to catch and was was hoping that they could continue developing him that way. But when you have a knee injury and you miss 3 or 4 months, and your bat is as advanced as it is, it just feels like you're punishing him almost by trying to force him to catch.
Sure.
I think I said on Twitter that his bat could get him to the big leagues, I think, by late 2026.
Okay.
So basically another full year in the minors this year, and then
somewhere in 26,
AA, AAA in 26, and then coming up to the majors. But if you force him to catch, you're talking maybe 28, 29 before he's an acceptable defender, and that just feels like it's
why?
Yeah, it doesn't feel when like there's nothing wrong with having a good first base hitter. I mean, we know that the offensive bar is pretty high, but he might have the offensive tools to make that work. So
yeah, I think that what you're saying, if he can truly hit on the major league level, and he's only at best going to be a guy who can just barely stay at catcher, be a fringy catcher, get him out of there and get him hitting in the big leagues. I mean,
yeah, and that's the thing with Lorenzo. I'm a little less convicted on his pure bat to ball skills, and I worry that he may end up being a guy who's hitting 215, 220 or less with walks and power when he makes contact.
Yeah,
and in that situation, you don't really want that guy at first base. I mean, there are some players like that. Like I think of maybe, I don't know, like a Justin Smoke back in the day. So I think it would behoove them and him to continue working him as catcher, just to try to see if it works. You know, people compare him to maybe like Samuel Basallo, the Orioles, who stayed at catcher for the most part. I think he's played a fair amount of first base now, but keep him playing there until you can't anymore. So that was my thoughts there. The only other things we can talk about on the AFL, we're almost at an hour and a half here. We could probably wrap it up.
Sure.
Rainer Castillo started the first game for the Scottsdale Scorpions and looked pretty darn good until the third inning when everything fell apart, and it wasn't necessarily his fault. It's a terrible pitching environment in Arizona.
It is brutal.
Basically, I was trying to say, hitters performing in the Arizona Fall League doesn't necessarily tell you anything. Like it's better than not performing for the most part, but there are some famous instances of great players not performing in the Arizona Fall League. I think Mike Trout didn't do anything his first year there. But you see a lot of guys go out there and just absolutely mash and not do anything in pro ball because it's arid, it's warm, breaking balls don't break as much. The pitchers are tired. The pitchers aren't very good.
The best pitchers aren't there usually. Yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't say the pitchers aren't very good, but normally what you're getting is kind of fringy swing man, middle reliever types who are trying to carve out a role. You're not getting. It's rare to get like Jackson Jobe last year and Andrew Painter this year. Like there's usually one or two of those guys because they were hurt during the year and they're working on some innings. But most of the pitchers you're facing are not elite.
Jeff Larish lit up the AFL one year.
There you go.
You know, and the Tigers also had a middle reliever named, I think, Rudy Darrow. Is that right?
Rudy Darrow, yeah.
He had a real nice AFL one year, you know.
Big ground baller.
He's selling insurance somewhere now.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I do take note when pitchers perform well in the AFL. There's you makes you think that there might be something there. But again, who knows? But Rainer Castillo pitched well, and then Jake Miller pitched well too. And he started on Saturday, and I think he got the first 8 batters out before I think he gave up a hit and then a 2-run homer and then was pulled.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peyton Graham's out there. He hasn't done much of anything yet. He's been his first game he played left field, so they're just trying him out in other positions. I think at this point, so
hasn't worked yet.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, that was. I don't know if there's anything else to really discuss about today's press conference or the Tigers' offseason plans. We kind of touched on a little bit of it all. I'm sure we'll retouch on all of this.
Kind of as you mentioned, as upcoming shows, we'll touch on this season, and we kind of sold this as maybe a wrap-up show, but there's a lot to wrap up, and we will get to it in bits and pieces as we go. But I guess one thing I'll just say again, and I've kind of touched on this in the past. It was great to take a step forward. It was great to watch a team play some fun baseball. I keep using the word fun because that's what it was, and I hope nobody takes that for granted because if you've been a Tiger fan for the last few years, we didn't get it a lot. So there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to talk about. The next few moves they make are going to be really fascinating to me because it's really going to tell you what Scott Harris wants to do and how he wants to build this major league roster. And who he believes in and who he doesn't. So, stay tuned, everybody. We should have a real fun winter here.
Yeah, and you can guarantee that if and when they trade for players or sign players, we'll be doing like emergency podcasts, and they could be doing them a bunch, and we'll be doing emergency podcasts left and right.
I like it.
But and we may even at some point soon we might do an Arizona Fall League live stream just to. In case, if Briseño and Lorenzo happen to be in the lineup and Castillo is pitching or something like that, it might be worth hanging around and watching those 3 guys. But
that would be fun.
Yeah. It's, I don't know, putting a capper on a pretty darn fun year that went away that none of us really expected halfway through. And so hard to be upset. And even though watching Cleveland lose, you wonder what could have been, but
when this team was 55-63, and all of a sudden they dropped this run of 700 baseball in our laps. I mean, did we even deserve that? It was just so shocking, and that's what I think we'll always remember from the 2024 season.
Yeah, an absolute. It was an absolute blast, and thanks everybody thanks for the donations. Thanks for sharing your time, your comments with us, and watching us or listening to us. And yeah, we'll keep you updated. We'll keep doing shows. Don't know the exact timeline or anything like that, but check our social media and we'll keep you updated. Till then, stay classy, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
See ya.